Good girl art, Sherlock Holmes, crime, Swedish and historical reference books by Gary Lovisi. Hi, I'm Gary Lovisi, and I just want to clue you on to 5 books that I've written over in the last few years, and they're detailed reference books that a lot of collectors and vintage paperback collectors and people interested in these topics would probably be very interested in. And just want to look at them now, take a quick look. The first one is the Sexy Digest. That's a survey, checklist, and value guide to the sexy exploitation pinup digest of the 1950s. And it looks at all these different various books. It's Gryphon Books. All of these are Gryphon books that I published years ago. And this is from 2001, original book. It's 100 pages, and it just looks through all the different series of the books you might be interested in. The Avon Digests, the Archer books, Cameo books, Carnival, Croydon, Diversity, Ecstasy, Falcon books, Intimate, Knickerbocker, Leisure Library, original novels, Phantom books, which we did a episode on, Prize Love novels, Quarter books, Rainbow books, Stallion books, Uni books, Venus books, and many, many others, small series. And in it, I go through a history of how the digests were published, and the companies, the authors, pseudonyms, also some of the photos that we use, the models, and cover art, of course, and the stories. Zip Gun Angels, the sexy, risque covers, good girl art, bad girls, femme fatales, JD books. There's lesbian books. There's White Slaves of New Orleans, hard-boiled stuff like Take It and Like It. And basically, it goes through all of these drug books, and has a lot of black and white covers of very scarce, and in some cases quite rare, digest. Reform School Girl, there's so many, and it goes through them by series, and it also lists the values of the books. That's, you take that with a grain of salt, because this was 2001, so that's almost 20 years ago now. The book came out, but copies are still available. Copies are still available online at ABE and at eBay and at my website from me, because I still have copies available, some of them, and they're also on the secondary market from other booksellers. So that's the first book, Sexy Digest. A little bit thicker, with the McGuire cover, is the Pulp Crime Digest. And this is a survey, index, and value guide to the exploitation and traditional crime digest magazines of the 1950s and 60s. It has an introduction by Harlan Ellison, and an afterword by Peter Infantino. And in it, it just goes through again, like similar to the Sexy Digest, all of the various book series. Mercury Mystery, some of the Mike Shane, not all of them. Doesn't have Ellery Queen, but it has Mystery Digest, Mystery Tales, Murder, Nero, Wolf, The New Black Mask, Offbeat, and all of those permutations of the magazine. It has Pocket Detective Magazine, Private Eye, Pursuit, Shell Scott Mystery Magazine, Shock Mystery Magazine, Sleuth, Surefire, Suspense, Accused, Crime Case Book, Crime Fiction, Double Action Detective Ed McBain, Espionage, Fast Action Detective, Guilty, even Hardboiled is listed in here, Justice, Keyhole, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Manhunt, Giant-Sized Manhunt, Man Trap, just about every one of the Crime Digest magazines. This one has the introduction by Harlan Ellison, which is really terrific about how he was writing for these magazines, and this one actually is signed by Harlan Ellison in 2004. The book came out in 2004, so it's signed by Harlan Ellison. This is just my own copy. And again, in it, he gives a great introduction about writing for these magazines, and then I continue with my article on the Pulp Digest, talking about again, the cover art, the pseudonyms, the photo covers and models that we use, the various authors, the art, and then the covers, and all of these. Mike Shane, everything you can think of, Manhunt, Guilty, Trapped. Sometimes the covers art was used on a paperback, like the Dove for handy books, on Strange Tales. Also covers were reused, Guilty, and then it was used, Guilty, the Switchblade knife in a smaller version. Again, the same magazine. They would use the same cover sometimes, with a little different size. All the Avon Detective, Mystery Crime magazines are shown. Covers, Bloodhound, the British series by Boardman, is in here. So many covers. Just at this time, 2004, printing in color was just impossible. It would have been so expensive, so I couldn't do it in color. So I did it in black and white. It's a shame, in a white, because this book would have been incredible for the information and the covers if it had been in color. Like the same with the Sexy Digest, but at that time the printing in color was just way too expensive. So we did it in black and white, and nice size cover illustrations to show you what the covers on a lot of these books look like. Manhunts. Each issue, it lists of the magazine, the month and the year, who did the cover if it's known, and who are the authors that are in each issue, along with important stories or other important facts that might pertain to it. There's a lot of research went into this, and it's still a valuable book as a research document that crime, all the offbeat publications, Offbeat, Phantom, Pocket Detective, Private Eye, all of these, Pursuit. So there's just so many, and there's a lot of information on all of these books, and a lot of covers, Trapped. So, without further ado, I just wanted to show you that. The fifth book is I got into collecting because of Swedish and Scandinavian collectors, Swedish paperbacks, which were quite interesting. This is a history and index price guide to Swedish paperbacks that are reprint U.S. and U.K. authors. In the 40s and 50s, basically after World War II, the authors that were really big were the American and British authors, and they printed them in a lot of the Scandinavian European countries almost exclusively. So they had, it was always like have an American author, Spillane type author, or Hammett Chandler type author, or American science fiction, or British mystery novels. So you had all of these, and they had great cover art because they either used the cover art from the American paperbacks, or had it redrawn, or had the cover art copied from the American paperbacks. So even though the books are Swedish, and they're written in Swedish, of course, I can't even read them, it does have collectability, because there's titles by every collectible author that we collect. Hammett and Chandler, Mickey Spillane, Wade Miller, science fiction authors, everyone that you can think of, and also Harry Whittington, Day Keene. I mean, just about everybody. And so with this book came out in 2003, and it lists all of these series that were published by different Swedish publishers. A lot of it is crime, and some of it is science fiction. Some of it is kind of sleazy, but it's all within the parameters of the 40s and 50s. And the book is dedicated to Bertil Hägglund, who was a Swedish artist who did a lot of the covers on the books. And he was a really fine gentleman, and he did a lot of these books. With the covers on the crime books, Manhattan series, Jaguar series. These are books a lot of you had never seen and probably will never see, but this has, it's interesting too, there were Heed like covers that were used. The art by Reginald Heed of the UK was copied for the some of the Swedish Digest covers, the Böckerna X books, which are really terrific covers. See the Ace books, and then the American Ace books, the Humming Box, and then the Böckerna X book, Swedish, similar cover art, redrawn. Same thing with this Harry Whittington, So Dead My Love Ace book, and then this is the Swedish Böckerna X. These are digests, and they're really cool. And I go into the story of a lot of the publishing companies, how they were set up, the authors that they had working for them, the pseudonyms that they used. This is a photo of Bertil Hägglund. This is one of the photos that he used for with a model, and then that's the painting of the cover art. This was a advertisement in Sweden at the time for these books. I think it was in Stockholm. These are Bertil Hägglund covers of Manhattan books. Some of these book series run 100 or so editions. Everybody who was anybody in American authors was published in these books. And while it's, and here's the colophons of all of the Swedish book series. Meteor books, Zephyr books. There was a Swedish Penguin books with a penguin logo. There was a Manhattan books, Dollar books. I already mentioned the Böckerna X. And there was even a N Pyramid book, Bach, which is book, which was a takeoff of the American pyramid. So a lot of these, not only the Swedish, but after World War II, in the 40s and 50s, a lot of the European publishers copied and used British and American publishing companies. They used some of their logos, some of their names, and definitely all of their authors and best authors, and the cover art, either copied it. And you can see here, yes, now this science fiction. These are, you may recognize some of these, like Ships of Vero and The Maid of Thuros, which were British mushroom publishers from the 50s, science fiction. They were published in Sweden under the Adam series, and these are some of the Adam books, and they're really stunning covers. There's just great stuff. I know none of you are going to start collecting Swedish paperbacks, but the thing is, some of you may be interested in them, and some of you maybe even have a few of them. And this book will tell you kind of what's available in all the different series, who the authors are, some of them in pseudonym. You'll be surprised. A lot of the Jaguar books. There's just so many series that are really nice. And the book also has a color section. So here you can see These are with the hypodermic needle, and these are based on Reginald Heed. And it's Frank Kane, Michael Storm, Harry Whittington. You know, it's always the best American authors that they can, and the British authors that they can find. So here you can see a lot of you can see that the cover art, if you get a good look at some of these, cover art is really, really cool. And the books are cool because they're all written by collectible American and British authors. So for American and British collectors, this is a whole new unknown, untapped aspect of collecting. And if you have a favorite author, you definitely want to have some of these books because in your collection, because they're really cool, and it's an added aspect to collecting that's something really different. And again, the cover art. This is one of the Harry Whittington's digests. It was reprinted as a Barkerna X digest. There's so many in the series. So just to give you an idea about these, I think that you know, you get a kick out of it. Again, a lot of these books are officially out of print. I have a few copies of some of them, and of course, if you buy them from me, I'll be glad to sign them for you. But they're also available on eBay from some dealers, and ABE. There's some nice ones. There's so many that are really, really cool. So just to give you an idea about that, that's the Swedish Vintage Paperback Guide. Another one that, as time went on, I was able to publish my reference books with color pages, and I did a different way of doing it with spiral bound and with an acetate cover to protect it on the back and the front. And this is Modern Historical Adventure Novels, the Survey Index and Value Guide. And this one was from 2006, Gryphon Books again, and the back cover. And this is all the paperbacks in this Modern Historical Adventure series novels. What that means basically is if you take historical adventure novels, and that's going to take a little explanation. So it's Harry Flashman and Patrick O'Brien, Bernard Cornwell, people like that. In here I explain about the books, about the authors, and then these are all the authors that are covered and their pseudonyms, because a lot of them wrote under pseudonyms. Not the three that I mentioned, but many others. So these are some of the series, and this is hardcovers and paperbacks. So it lists all of the books by these authors, basically from any historical adventure series, more than one book in a series that was published from the late 60s, from the time of George MacDonald Fraser when he came out with the Harry Flashman books, to 2006 when this book came out. It's in color. It has all the Cornwell books, the early Sharps, which were very popular, and some of them are quite expensive, especially the British editions. There's some of the British editions. And the paperbacks. And they're all in color. These are the David Scott covers for a series of the British paperbacks. This is the very rare Sharp Skirmish, which was given out free at stores and then disappeared, and then it was reprinted. So Bernard Cornwell is a major author in this field because he has series that are very popular, and they're historical adventure fiction. But there's others, David Donacci, so many others. Gary Douglas Kilworth, his Sergeant Jack, I forget, Sergeant Jack Crossman series, hardcovers and the paperbacks. There's the Flashman books. These are the American hardcovers. That's the first one in the series, 2, 3, and 4. Some of the British paperbacks. George MacDonald Fraser's Flashman series is terrific. If you have any interest in history but also love satire, humor, comedy, just wild stuff, you'll love these. And the book lists all the various books and gives you an idea on the values. There's the Fox series. These are paperback originals. There's a bunch of them, and the British ones that were reprinted by New English Library. There's so many. There's Richard Howard's stories set during the Napoleonic War. A lot of these are set during the Napoleonic War, the French and Indian War, the American Civil War, World War I, American Revolution, Kent, Alexander Kent, who wrote his Richard Bolitho series. These are hardcovers and paperbacks. Fantastic naval adventure series in the tradition of C.S. Forester's Hornblower. C.S. Forester is not in this book because I don't list. This is a modern books, and I had to cut it off somewhere. So I cut it off at C.S. Forester, who was published in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So while Forester is not in here, everybody that's come out since Forester is. And there's Dewey Lambdin. So many authors. Duncan McNeill. He did a series of the Ogilvy series. Alan Mallinson, who was a very good writer in the Patrick O'Brian mold. His books, Close Run Thing, was for a while a hypermodern first edition, very expensive. These are some of the books in the series. Then there's other Lieutenant Lamb. There's another Half-Hide, Philip McCutcheon. Is a tough British sea captain. So you see, there's also Patrick O'Brian books are in here. Here's Patrick O'Brian, Master and Commander, and the various other hardcover and paperback books with values. There's values of the to give you a general idea what the books are worth, at least what they were worth around 2006 when this book came out. So there's, you see, a lot of the Ramage books by Dudley Pope, and it's just a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool historical adventure. These are all adventure novels too. Simon Scarrow, the Macro and Cato books. That's the first one in the series. They are terrific. If you like, there's the Roman Empire. Terrific books. So there you have a look at my fourth book, Modern Historical Adventure Novels. I just wanted to, and the fifth book, the last we'll look at, is Sherlock Holmes, the Great Detective, in paperback and pastiche, and it's a survey, index, and value guide. Again, as time went on, I was able to use color, and that's really a great thing to be able to do when you're doing a book like this. This came out in 2008. Lucille, my wife, did the artwork on cover art design on this book, and on this one, and on this one, which has a Maguire cover that Bob McGuire generously let me use. And the Sherlock Holmes, this lists every paperback book by Doyle about Sherlock Holmes and by everybody else about Sherlock Holmes, every pastiche or parody. And not only books, but booklet and pamphlets. So here's like just some of the covers of some of the books. And again, it gives you, this is the expansion of a book that I did years before. Here's the first meeting of Holmes and Watson. Stamford is introducing Watson to his strange friend in the laboratory named Sherlock Holmes, who's doing some experiments. And the book, again, goes into all the pastiches of Sherlock Holmes. It has a introduction by John Bennett Shaw, who is an esteemed Sherlockian and a friend, and also a new introduction for this edition by Michael Kurland, who was my editor on 3 books that he did for St. Martin's Press, where I did a pastiche in each of the books. And basically it just goes through all the different, collecting the books, finding them, the authors, the artists, the canon. It tells you the books that were the early Sherlock Holmes books, and it's all in color, so it's really cool. Early books by Doyle, and some of these are pirated editions. These are American editions that were pirated. And then various, so it talks about the books by Doyle and in the canon. And then the books by the, those are like dime novels, the early ones we looked at. There's some early ones. There's a French one. This is a British Digit. And these are the early Sherlock Holmes paperbacks it goes through. And then in this British, that's the rare British pocket book of the Hound of the Baskervilles. His Last Bow, Pan book, British Pan book, nice American Bantam book, and various others. And then it goes through, once it goes through all of the books and it lists them and it talks about the what the story is about, what stories are in the book, and other interesting facts about the edition, who did the cover art, etc. And there's some interesting personal notes and things that I put in, and other people have allowed me to put in. So all of these are the various editions. This is the 2 editions of Pocketbook. That's that is the first printing, and then there was a 13th printing variant. One time in the 13th printing they did that cover, Pocketbooks. Same number. So it's and now part D is the paperback pastiches. So what now you're talking about Sherlock Holmes in this index, written by other people than Doyle. So Sherlock Holmes appears in certain books, and there's the various books, 10 Years Beyond Baker Street with Sherlock Holmes and Fu Manchu by Kay Van Ash. Powell Anderson did a science fictional Sherlock Holmes. There's this series that was by Val Andrews and others in British trade paperbacks. Otto Penzler reprinted some. Giant Rat of Sumatra, which is by Richard L. Boyer, which is one of the best pastiches ever written, and a book that I published by Dana Martin Battori in my own Gryphon books about Sherlock Holmes, a Baker Street dozen, plus one, because it was like actually it was 13 articles. So these are books of stories, pastiches, and also articles about Sherlock Holmes by other people than Doyle. And there's a lot of them, and a lot of them. And some of them are really cool. And this book goes through them all the different series. Karen Nelson Douglas's pastiches, Solar Ponds by August Derleth, all the couple of books by Lauren Estelman. So it's alphabetical by author's last name, and you can just see how much research has been done on this. Holmes for the Holidays, Sherlock Holmes and the Case of Sabina Hall, The Adventure of the Peerless Peer by Philip Jose Farmer, has Sherlock Holmes in Africa with Tarzan fighting World War I. I mean, the people that have appeared in these books, the pastiches, with Sherlock Holmes and who he fights, Moriarty, and others are, endless. Oscar Wilde. I mean, everybody that you can think of throughout history, or especially from the Victorian era, at one point or another, has appeared in a Sherlock Holmes book. The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, from the Billy Wilder film. This is the movie tie-in from Bantam Books with a Robert McGuinness cover. The Incredible Umbrella, which is based on one of the cases that Watson talks about. That's by Marvin Kaye. There's so many. This is one of the books that I mentioned, the 3 books that I contributed a story to, edited by Michael Curlin. There's The Pandora Plague. There's other Curlin books, The Infernal Device and Death by Gaslight. And there's just so much in here that I could have never done this research, except I had done it since an article in Fred Greenberg's Paperback Advertiser in 1983, and then I took that article and I expanded it, put it into a book. Then I took that book years later and expanded it into another book, and then I took that book and I expanded it into this book, and this has like so much information. This has the cover-proof copy for 7% Solution, which is the key book, which started off in the 70s when Nicholas Meyer wrote it. Before the film came out, this started the pastiche boom in Sherlock Holmes. And this is the West End Horror, his second book, and you can see this little die cut, and then this is what's inside that paperback. So there's all kinds of little odds and ends here that interesting, that I think a Sherlockian would get lost in this book, and a lot of stuff, a lot of information. And if you're looking for a good research book on Sherlock Holmes, or a good research book on modern historical adventure novels, on the crime digest of the 50s, of Swedish Paperbacks, maybe not, but definitely the Sexy Digests. Any of these books, if you're looking for them, these are 5 reference books that reference books that I have written and compiled, and I'm very proud of them. And I know a lot of people own them and have told me that how much they enjoy them. And there's still some copies available from me on order from me, signed, and they're also on ABE and eBay for myself and from various other dealers. And with that, I just want to say thank you for looking. I like to talk about some of the work that I've done in the past, and let you know about some of the books that these weren't really distributed very well, and a lot of people don't know about them. And when they came out 15 or so years ago, some of them, a lot of people may not have, some collectors may not have been into some of this material, and now they may be, and they would love to have this kind of a book where they can have this reference information, because that's what the thing is. It's seeing the covers and seeing the books that are available in certain series and knowing what's available and finding information about them. And in some cases, you're not going to find it anyplace else but in these books. And that's why I wrote them and published them, because I felt there was a need for it, even for the Swedish books. I mean, there was never anything written on Swedish paperbacks, and there's a whole big story to be told there. And certainly in the Sherlock Holmes, the historical, the crime digests, and the sexy digests, those are extremely popular areas of collecting in the past and today. So again, I'd just like to thank you for looking. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up and a like, and tell your friends and collector friends about these books and about this YouTube channel. I'd appreciate it if you subscribe and give us a look. And thanks again.